what was it like, let's say 10, 15 years ago, and what is it like today? What are some of the changes that you're seeing in what organizations are doing, what employees are expecting, and why is it all happening?
Okay, sure. So I'll start with diversity and inclusion, because I think that's, of the three areas that we're responsible for, that's probably the oldest, if you will, that's been around longer in corporate America, as you know. What I've seen in that space over the past 10 to 15 years, and it probably applies more broadly as well, is that it used to be very sort of policy-driven and a function that was seen as a soft function. This is a generalization, by the way. There are plenty of examples otherwise. But at the end of the day, people would see the diversity and inclusion team as a separate kind of standalone function, looking at policies and procedures to enable diversity to happen. What's happened is that the whole model has switched on its head. So now people are much more focused on inclusion versus diversity. Because what people are realizing, and what companies therefore are realizing, is that you can bring in a whole bunch of diverse people, but if the culture doesn't support it, it's not going to work. And you can have policies and programs and all sorts of things in place, which you have to do. There's no doubt you have to do that, but you also have to build that culture. So it's really about changing the environment and the culture to support that, and that's where you're starting to see the shift. I think the other area that I've seen, even just in the past 3 to 5 years, is that, and I see this personally, anecdotally as well, is that the business case is clear. There is so much research out there. We do research around diversity, Catalyst does research, a whole host of other organizations do this type of research. And so we spend very little time, if in fact none at this point, selling the business case anymore. I see that in my own work as I speak a lot, as I mentioned to you earlier, and no longer are people focusing on that. They're just saying, we get it. We realize this is important. We get the impact on the bottom line. What do we do about it now? So the conversation has evolved. And we're seeing the same thing with sustainability, for example, although at not a slower pace. It's just a little bit behind in the sense it's a newer topic, right? So people are now starting to understand what it means. It's a much more complicated space, frankly. There's a huge environmental, scientific aspect to it that takes a lot of time and energy to really get your head around. But we're starting to see people focus on that more importantly because of the millennials. And what's also happening, I come from finance, right, or from investment banking, there is a whole exercise underway where we're starting to see wealth transfer. So in the next 15 to 20 years, 70% of all assets under management globally, which is about 70 trillion US dollars, will be in the hands of women and millennials. So they'll be managing 70% of the assets. So that means, getting back to impact investing, financial services has to change. Advisors have to understand social issues now in order to appease the needs and interests of that particular population. So that's where you're starting to see it evolve. It's moving from a softer, people-related exercise, although that's very, very important, to more of a business imperative and an expectation.